I don't know if we've ever had quite this situation before with the Bears drafting first overall and having a good but young and still not fully complete quarterback in Justin Fields. At least that's the way that I see him. So I think it's a very fascinating discussion of what should they do in this spot. And, the way I see it, there are three options. These are the three options. They could first trade the first overall pick. I think that, technically there's four options. You could also draft like a Jalen Carter first overall if you want to. I don't think they would. I think the draft capital you'd get back for trading, not to mention you could just trade with the Texans one spot back and probably still get some value for that. And then your, Texans are going to get a quarterback, so you still get your pick of the litter who is non-quarterback. So I just don't see any way they pick first overall. I think that, they could trade the first overall pick. That is option one. Option two is trade Justin Fields. Then you draft what I would assume would be Bryce Young first overall. The third option would be to draft Bryce Young and not trade Justin Fields. Those are the three options. Because while I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, do you trade the first overall pick or do you trade Fields, you can do neither. You don't have to do both or one of those things. Certainly don't do both. I mean, you do, make sure you get at least one of those guys, but you don't have to do one of them if you don't want to. You can keep Justin Fields and also draft Bryce Young. But let's just get into it first. We got to make sure that before we get further into discussion, we have to talk about how we view Fields as a player right now, because some Bears fans get very upset at even the thought of trading Fields. Well, let's use PFF grades as an example, and I'll put an asterisk on it that I will touch on in just a second, but as of right now, in 41 eligible quarterbacks, his PFF grade overall was 23rd in football. His passing grade was 36th best in football, so not very effective as a passer at all, but very effective as a runner, third best in football. That's kind of where he is right now. The asterisk is all of these things improved throughout the season. It didn't improve so much that this should be way higher or anything like that, but it did improve enough throughout the season that I feel pretty comfortable saying he's a top 20 quarterback in football, maybe top 15. That's kind of right around where I would have him. So the question is, can he improve and become that top 5 player that those guys tend to be the ones who consistently win Super Bowls for the next decade plus? Maybe you can find a way to, in a perfect scenario, win a Super Bowl without that happening, but the easiest way is to get the superstar quarterback, and that's where the discussion of getting rid of Fields comes in. It's not a dislike of Fields. Fields is a good player, I would say, but he's also not a perfect player in my opinion. And again, if you disagree, that's fine. We're just going to disagree on this situation. But in my opinion, there are some flaws in his game, and the fact that he does rely on running so much and will take some hits concerns me about his health and if he could get injured and things like that. But the good outweighs the bad. I like Fields as a prospect. That's kind of the main thing I feel like. Is how I would phrase it, is I like Fields, but as a prospect. I don't know if he's going to turn into an elite quarterback. In fact, I made this chart. To me, this is the perfect way to talk about it. So a great prospect, typically a top 10 quarterback, has about a 33% chance of becoming a elite quarterback. That's typically the odds, or at least a close to elite quarterback. That's kind of what you're looking at. So Bryce Young, let's say he's a great prospect. Let's give him that 33% chance of being great. Justin Fields, I'm putting at a 40 to 60% chance. Now, how did I come up with that number? Well, what I'm doing is I'm looking at his Pro Football Focus grade and looking at the history of success and how often players who graded that way tend to become great quarterbacks in their own right, and it's usually about 40 to 60%. The reason why there's a difference there is I made groupings, and the cutoff for me was a 70 grade or higher, but for him, he barely cleared that 70 grade. So 70 grade or higher would be a 60% chance. Below would be a 40% chance. He just barely cleared it, so we'll give him the 60% chance. So if they trade Fields and go with the great prospect, you're giving yourself a smaller chance of getting a elite quarterback, but you're gaining 2 years of a rookie deal. That's the trade-off with that. For Justin Fields, if you keep him, you're getting a better chance of getting that elite quarterback that has a chance to win a Super Bowl, but you're losing another year of the rookie deal, and now you only have 2 years left because the fifth year, while you do get that 5th year option, it's still not, you still have to pay him a decent chunk of money. Now, if you keep both of them, and let's just give Fields the 60% odds of succeeding, this now means that you have a 73% chance of getting that elite quarterback. Your odds get higher, and if the way I view football is that an elite quarterback matters above all else, and getting that, no price is too high, then spending an additional first-round pick for an additional 13% chance of getting that elite quarterback, you could consider that it's worth it. Also, I decided to do this where I went on the PFF mock draft simulator and just played around with the trade situation, which has a few bugs. It's not a perfect situation, but I was just curious, how much draft capital could you get for either of these two things, of the first overall pick or the player Justin Fields? First overall, they say you could get for the Texans the second overall and an additional first round pick, whereas for Fields, you could get the second overall, an additional first round pick, and an additional fourth. So they say that Fields is slightly more valuable than the first overall pick in this year's draft, for whatever it's worth. Just was curious to see what would happen there, so maybe that could impact your opinion a little bit. Or maybe if, for example, if you could get 3 first-round picks for that first overall pick, maybe you decide to trade that, but if maybe you can't, but you could get 3 first-round picks for Fields, maybe you trade it that way as well, right? Maybe it comes down to what compensation will you get for getting rid of one of these two valuable pieces that could be the difference in being a bad franchise and a fantastic one. Personally, I think I stick with Fields. I do not think that I trade Fields. I think it's a real discussion you have to have, but I think I at least keep Fields on my roster. To me, the decision is more so, do I draft Bryce Young or do I trade the first overall pick? I'm not trading Justin Fields. There's too good of a chance. He's a weird player, right? There's not a lot of players like him. He's this unique talent of he is successful at the NFL despite not being traditionally what makes you successful at the NFL. It's fair to be weirded out by him, I think it's fair to say. But at the same time, I want to keep him on my roster. If I'm the Bears, I think he's too valuable of a piece. Is it worth drafting the first overall pick, drafting Bryce Young with the first overall pick? If it was a video game, I think I say yes. I think I do. The issue is, it's a real situation. Like, people in the locker room, that stuff matters. And, the personal aspect of football, I kind of like to be an analytics guy and not pay attention to that stuff as much as other people do, but it does matter. And that might be a very valid reason to say, you know what, we got to just keep one guy here. I don't know, though. I kind of like the idea of maximizing my odds as much as possible. To me, I don't think it's a crazy idea to say, listen, we're going to draft Bryce Young. We're going to let him sit behind Justin Fields for a year. If Justin Fields turns into that elite quarterback and develops as a passer, cool. Then we will, keep Justin Fields, trade Bryce Young a year later. Not going to get quite the same value back as a first overall pick, simply because, there will be better quarterback prospects next year's draft, but also just the situation of, you lost a year of the rookie deal, but you're still going to get great value back for him, so it's not necessarily a complete loss. You can still build around Fields with something like that. And the other argument is I don't know if Fields is going to succeed. I don't. I like what I saw from him in his rookie year. That's how I view his performance. So for me, I don't think it's a crazy idea to maybe just consider looking elsewhere and considering a backup plan. I don't think that's crazy, just given the high expectations I would want to have for a quarterback in the NFL. I don't want a good quarterback. I want a great one. And can Fields become a great one? Maybe, but I don't know that for sure. That's kind of the way I view it. But at the same time, I could totally see the logic behind just trading the first overall pick with the mental side of things. To me, it's between one of those two things. Gun to my head, I think if I had to do it, I probably, if I'm being honest, would just trade the first overall pick. I don't think I would have the balls to draft Bryce Young there. But the fun pick would be to draft Bryce Young. So that's what I'll say. I'll say I would draft Bryce Young, but keep Fields. It's Fields' team. But if he can't develop in his third year, well, then we got to look elsewhere. That's kind of the way that I view it. And you don't have to look elsewhere. You have something else elsewhere. So there you go. And you should have a good, if Fields doesn't develop, well, then, maybe you will still have a good first round pick next year too. So I don't know. It's a very fascinating discussion, and it's not necessarily an anti-Fields discussion to have unless you're of the belief Fields is already an elite quarterback, which I just am not. But yeah, that's what I think about all of this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.